Well, welcome to our conversation about the Kitchen Collective and this particular idea of how church kitchens could be used to create space and ministry and mission and community engagement. So before we do anything else, please join me in prayer. Holy and merciful God, it is no mistake that we have story after story of food and gathering around a table of oil and meal that don't run out, that visitors who come and receive hospitality and leave a blessing in return. Gathering around food, that which feeds our bodies and fuels our hearts and souls for your work, is one of the best things we do. And I'm so grateful for the ways that we are creative around food, around ministries of food, around feeding each other, feeding our neighbors, feeding the world. So be with us as we learn about one particular ministry today. Be with us, spark our imaginations, help us wonder and dream how we can join your story of welcoming people who were strangers and are now friends into the kitchen, to sit at the table, to be part of tasting and seeing that you are good. Let your spirit move through each and every one of us. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, I'm Cindy Coleman, and I have the joy and honor of serving as connectional presbyter and stated clerk in Newcastle Presbytery. And this thing that you're going to have a chance to hear about and talk about and wonder about was in process before I ever showed up on the scene. So I have that fantastic position of being a cheerleader and a collaborator and somebody who knows that people with amazing gifts have got this. And that particular person with amazing gifts who has this is Chelsea. I am so happy to share with you that Chelsea was ordained by the United Methodist Church on Saturday and was ordained to this ministry, to Ministry of Riverside Church. And the Kitchen Collective is one of the primary missions of Riverside. So we have this great ecumenical food ministry, and Chelsea brings fantastic gifts to that. So Chelsea, I'm gonna turn it over to you to tell the story and share the dream.
Yeah, so before I hop into our story, I'd love to just hear, for those of you on the call, what brought you to this call? Why did you either ask Cindy for more information or say yes to this Zoom time?
Mary, why don't you start?
Well, I am a retired Christian ed director, and when I retired, I put on another hat, and that was working with our new community garden. And we have Garden City has a lot of immigrants who come here to work in ag related industry. And we also have a kitchen that's not being very used. It's not very, we have a deep sink. We don't have a great dishwasher. It's really a sterilizer, not a dishwasher, but it's a space that might be able to be used. But I've also learned that I can have great ideas, or somebody can have great ideas, but I need to make sure that the community around us feels a need for that. So, but I came to get ideas to see what you're doing, Chelsea.
Thanks, Mary.
I'm just going in the order you came on. So Sarah, if you go next.
Yeah, so I'm in a community of about 9,000 people. And in 2018, there was an ice raid, which really disrupted our community and kind of started an immigrant ministry with our church. And a year ago, our kitchen got certified, and we've been doing selling freezer meals to support the immigrant program. And I just feel like we could be doing more. So that's why I'm here.
Great.
Awesome. And Dee.
Hi, I'm Dee Cooper. I will be the new Presbytery leader of Denver Presbytery. And I'm often looking for ways and innovative ideas of bringing our churches together, both ecumenically and in their communities. And so I'm just here totally to learn and hopefully have some sparks of ideas to scatter around with the Presbytery I'll be engaging with.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to share a PowerPoint here in a few minutes, but just want to give you a bit of our beginning of the story. So Riverfront is a new worshiping community of the Presbytery. It was started kind of unofficially more than 10 years ago, and then really got off the ground about 7 years ago. We meet outside on the riverfront here in Wilmington at a pavilion for worship. And then in the winter and when it's storming, we meet in different restaurants and bars and cafes in the area. And really from the beginning, the words of song, word, and table have been important to Riverfront. And when you ask people in our community, like last week, I actually just asked folks about some of our traditions. We're reading a book right now by Valerie Carr called See No Stranger. And she comes from the Sikh tradition. And she was talking all about ritual. And so I asked them, what are rituals that stick out to you when you think about Riverfront? And every single person said communion, right? This gathering around the table. And many of our folks go somewhere else Sunday mornings, but then they worship with us Sunday evenings. And many of them describe Riverfront as a space of rest and a space of community and a space of table. And so we've really been grounded in food from our beginning, but not really sure what that was going to look like missionally. And about 3.5 years ago, a community partner titled Wilmington Alliance came to the pastor at the time of Riverfront, Edwin Estevez, and said, we have this idea for a community kitchen, a shared kitchen space. They had been looking at different empty storefronts and had been looking at building from an empty space and really building from scratch. But that project was going to cost around $2 million. And when that estimate came back, they had a couple of their major funders pull back, really unsure if there was that much of a need for that large of a space here in Wilmington. So Wilmington Alliance, who they really specialize in economic development and small business development. They really look at different spaces that are underutilized in the city and say, how could this be something else? So they went back to the drawing board and they had the idea of what if we found a church or a community center or an old YMCA or some building that already exists that has the bones, and we could invest in it. And so Wilmington Alliance actually approached Grace United Methodist, which is one of the partners of Riverfront. And Grace said, we have the space, but we don't have the people. We believe in this project, but we don't know how we could launch it. And then there was Riverfront, this partner of theirs that does not have any physical space that we own because we meet outside and in different bars and restaurants. And Riverfront at the time was really looking for a mission project and a way to really invest in the city. So Grace said, we have the physical space. Wilmington Alliance said, we have some funding and the idea, and Riverfront said, we think we could get some additional funding, and we are willing to invest a staff person part-time to this mission. And that is when I come into the picture. So I was that part-time staff member. And really for that first, for the first year almost, we did a lot of grant writing to the Presbytery, to the Methodists, because it was in a Methodist building, to community organizations, to a couple of national ag grants. Really anywhere that we saw food and justice, we went for it. And especially locally, the grant funding came really slowly, right? It was like $10,000 at a time, which in Grant World, in the beginning, I was like really excited because I was new to Grant World. And now I know that like, I was glad. I'm glad that I was excited, but it was a slow and hard process because we really needed to get to around 120,000 before we were going to move forward with our architect and with construction. And then we went through the process of rebuilding this kitchen here at Grace to really just bring it up to code. The kitchen had been redone here about 20 years prior, and so it had good structure, but it needed to be brought up to code. And so we spent most of 2020 writing grants. We spent most of 21 with contractors and waiting for equipment. And now in 2022, on January 4th, we passed our health department application, and we are officially open. And so that's a bit of our process. And now I'm going to just share more of the fun stuff, really, more of the pieces that give me joy. So let me put this in slideshow mode. You guys can see this? Yes? Yeah. Okay. So the Wilmington Kitchen Collective is our name. We were really specific to name it to Wilmington because this is the geography of Riverfront, right? We see our calling here in the city. And we are excited about the potential of other kitchens around the state and around the country. But Riverfront Church is not going to run a kitchen incubator in Philadelphia or in Baltimore or in Iowa or Denver or Kansas or anywhere else. We are more than happy to help work with churches through this process. And we're beginning to figure out like what would a consulting fee and process look like if other churches wanted to go through this. We really believe in sharing all that we've learned from construction to policies and procedures to like all of it. But we are excited and about the space here in Wilmington. I'll also share that when Riverfront opened this first kitchen, when we first said yes to this 2.5 years ago, nobody on our board and myself would have guessed that we would be opening multiple sites, right? We always thought that like there would be a kitchen and that like this would be enough. But very quickly, our waiting list grew really long. And we now have over 60 businesses who are looking for physical space. And so we have begun to dream, and we have just announced that we will open a second site. And again, I'm just really amazed at the way that the Spirit has been working around sites, again, that weren't on the table a few years ago and now seem like a no-brainer. So we are the Wilmington Kitchen Collective, and this is our mission statement in its fullest. All right, so we're this community-based project dedicated to empowering holistic transformation by providing affordable, high-quality commercial kitchens, business development, and economic support. So, and and to culinary entrepreneurs, right? To folks who are in the startup phase, especially, and in the dreaming phase of what could business look like. And the business development and economic support is really important to us because we have heard over and over again from our entrepreneurs that space is not enough, right? That to launch and to do business well in the startup phase, they need more support and resources. And so some of the grants that we write are specifically for economic support, right? Grants like micro grants that are going directly to our entrepreneurs. And then the business development side of it really brings together a lot of different partners to the table. So we at Riverfront and at the Kitchen are not business experts who have run our own food trucks and who know like how to do this, right? But we have a lot of connections in the community. So we've said, how can we bring some of these connections together? So we really are more than a kitchen space, right? We're a space that helps coach our entrepreneurs through the licensing process. To become fully certified as a food business is a long process. And here in Delaware, there are 5 different licensures that you need at least to operate in the city of Wilmington, because you need both your city and your state permits. So we provide some coaching through that process, really just like sitting with folks to make sure that forms get filled out correctly so that there's not a back and forth with the state for months on end. One of the grants that we received this past year allowed us to reimburse folks for the cost of those licenses. The licensing process, at least here in Delaware, if you are starting with none of those licenses to getting everything, is around $750, which you can imagine, again, if you are a startup business and you are not receiving any income, that is a high bar to meet. And so, again, one of our grants allows us to reimburse for licenses. I named those grants to help folks renovate their food trucks and like specific improvements. But then this last section is really, right, the non-financial support, which is what, when you talk to our entrepreneurs, this is the support that they really highlight as the most important. So we have held many workshops on teaching specific skills. One of my favorites was a food photography and styling workshop where we had everybody bring a dish. And then we had a food stylist and a food photographer there, and they like worked with folks with their phones, right? Like our entrepreneurs are not, they're using their phones. And so they brought a dish and folks, those 2 trainers showed us like, all right, if you just adjust the spoon this much and lower your camera by 30 degrees, like the picture transforms, right? And all of a sudden, this was one of the first workshops we did. And all of a sudden, like all of our entrepreneurs were like working on everybody's dishes and everybody was seeing like, oh, well, I see it this way and I see it that way. And so our workshops are more than a teaching, but they're also this space for community building. And then we have built a really strong partnership with our Small Business Development Center. I believe that each state has a Small Business Development Center. And here in Delaware, that center is only about 20 minutes from Wilmington. And so each of our folks has a caseworker at SBDC. And one of the requirements to begin with us is that they have met with someone at SBDC and they have built a beginning business plan, right? And then that coach continues to work with them to check in on how is this going? Is what you projected to be your costs actually your costs? Are you able to keep up with your expenses? How is it going? Again, that's one of those like us bringing in experts, because as much as I can like run our business plan here at Riverfront, I don't know what it takes to like open a food truck and run a catering business. And then we have training programs and again, coaches that we've hired to do like specific contracts, both for social media and marketing and accounting. So again, some of these tangible supports, and really all of this is just trying to build a wider community, right? Is trying to make sure that our entrepreneurs know that when they win, we win, right? And that we are in this with them together. So many of them, and Monique shares it in this, what our cohort says, so many of them just name how lonely the culinary world can be and how competitive the culinary world can be, and just how refreshing it is to be in this space where everyone is rooting for each other. And this is a question that like we ask folks in kind of the intake process of like, do you actually desire to be in a community like this, right? Because this means working together. It means sharing kitchen space. It means being patient when somebody is running over time or somebody forgot to wipe down the surface exactly right? Like not everybody fits in this model. And we've had some folks say like, I need the kitchen, but I want to rent it 8 hours a day. And I promise you we'll be in there 8 hours a day. And it's like, well, that doesn't really work for us, because if you actually need the space 8 hours a day, you're ready for like your own commercial space. And so we've worked with them. We've referred them to another spot in the city that is like working on grants and loans for new storefronts on the West Side. So we're like, you should go talk to West Side Grows because they actually are looking for businesses there. This space is not the right one. So this is a bit of more than just kitchen space. And we have been asked a lot. This is a picture of our kitchen. We have been asked a lot, like, is this actually a need? And it is. Again, in Delaware, there's only one other shared kitchen space. And it is a state requirement that every food truck, every caterer be cooking out of a certified kitchen. And like I said, we currently have a waiting list of more than 60 businesses. And we've never said the words, we have space, come sign up. And so then the other question I get a lot is, how is this church? Right? For folks who say like, well, this sounds like a great project. This sounds like a need in the community, but how is this church? And for us at Riverfront, it is church because we believe God has given us resources to share, right? We believe that we are supposed to be generous and in sharing the abundance that's been given. And so many churches have the space, right? And it celebrates the gifts of the community. It celebrates the ways that so many in our community have things to give. And so many of our entrepreneurs, right, they're around the table teaching one another and sharing resources and sharing stories. And it is meeting this real need of physical space. And then this last one has become really special to me in the ways that so many who are a part of the collective have said, I don't understand why a church would care about me in this way. And they have shared that they have not been to church in a really long time, most of which they share because they have catering jobs on Sunday mornings, or maybe they've been out late with a job on a Saturday night. And they confess that it's been a long time since they've walked into a church. And so it is just such a gift to have this list of people who call me their pastor and who call Riverfront their church, right? I've joked with folks in our presbytery that Riverfront has become the church of culinary entrepreneurs and musicians, because we have like a lot of musicians that rotate through with us. And we have this list of 60 businesses that we're involved with. But because we're more than just a kitchen space, they call me when a family member is in the hospital. and they text me when they pick up a new catering job. And they send me selfies when they're like at a catering job that I've referred them to. And they text me to check in with so-and-so at another business because they ran into them on their way out and they were stressed, and they just wonder like, how did that job go? And do they need anything? Like this community is building and is beginning to share with one another in really vulnerable ways. That, yeah, it's church, right? And it's like church in its best form. It's good. And it, again, is not something that we could have ever, that we envisioned or imagined for ourselves, right? Like we kept saying yes to the table, and we kept saying yes to community meetings, and we kept saying yes to like creativity and worship in weird forms. But like we hadn't said yes to a kitchen until 2.5 years ago. And now this kitchen is really becoming something more. I talked with y'all a bit through the process to open. There's a lot of nitty gritty, like a lot of very specific steps that took a lot of time. And I'm happy to talk more about that after, if there's like a specific step that you're thinking about. But this was our general process to open. Yeah, I'll just say that. And then we're really excited because one, like this is Nasir, who's the son of some of our business owners, and like he's going to grow up in the Kitchen Collective, right? But we're also excited because this space really opens up so many other possibilities, right? Like now that this space is commercial, so like Nasir's parents are going to start Thursday orders from the Grace Church, from the kitchen, like from DoorDash starting this summer. So like you will be able to DoorDash some DNA barbecue, right? I'm so excited. We'll be able to DoorDash some food directly from our entrepreneurs to your table. We also are exploring, there are a couple of garden plots already outside of Grace, and we're exploring how to grow more there to have it go directly to the table. We also have started, we do a lot of different food distribution ministries out of the Methodist Church. And so we're excited to add hopefully a monthly meal here soon that's sponsored by the Kitchen Collective, that is supporting, again, our neighbors in West Center City, just a few blocks away. There's a lot, there's like so many food, right? Once you start entering the realm of food, there are so many possibilities. For us, that next step was around a shared kitchen space. For a little while, Riverfront was discerning, like, should we be opening a cafe? And that was like pre-COVID, and COVID has shifted the market in the city. So like that is on pause, but like, I don't know, in the 5-10 year plan, like maybe there's a Kitchen Collective restaurant where the chefs rotate every week, or maybe they're like, there's just so many possibilities. And it is really exciting to be a part of it. And really, so again, Riverfront doesn't have physical space, but we are really beginning to claim our space in the city as helping churches reclaim their space, right? And use their space in creative ways. And we're starting to talk to churches who think and are excited about doing this on their own. And so I've said to them, like, go do it. Like, I will help you open it. And if you are here in Delaware, I will share our waiting list. And because the need is so great. I had somebody ask me a few weeks ago, like, am I worried about competition of communal kitchens in Wilmington? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, how beautiful would it be if in 5 years, anyone who wanted to start a commercial food business could do so. And there was like space for you to come and incubate and like try this thing out because churches had opened their doors, right? Like because churches had said yes to businesses, like I'm ready for that need to be met. I'm ready to like not need to open another one because we're at capacity of kitchen spaces. I don't think I don't, it's going to be a long time before we get there. But I'm ready for that day if that day can happen. So I tell folks all the time, like if you're ready to open a space, I will cheerlead and help you and like let's do this work together. So that's I think that's the end. Yeah, that's us. I wanted to make sure to leave plenty of room for time. So what questions do you have?
Okay, so how do the finances work, and is there a tithe to the church that comes out of this?
Yeah, so the initial construction, again, was all grant raised. But now businesses pay a monthly storage and membership fee that gains them. So the health department requires everybody to have refrigeration, freezer, and dry storage here. So that gives them storage space. And it also gives them access to like all of those membership perks. And then they pay an additional fee per hour, depending on their business model and depending on how often they're using the kitchen. And we took those rates. We looked at, there are lots of shared kitchens around the country. And so we did a lot of price comparisons. And we looked at rates in Delaware, and then we lowered those pretty significantly. But it is a solid business expense. And we've actually had 2 members. So we launched in January. We've had 2 members who started with us who said, you know what, actually, I'm not ready for this step. Like I thought I was ready to have a monthly storage fee and hourly use, but I'm not ready. And so they have stepped out of the kitchen, but we're still working with them on their business model and how to potentially get them back in the kitchen or to meet their new needs. And then, so all of those, the monthly and the daily use come to Riverfront. And then Riverfront pays for our kitchen manager and rent to the churches that we are hosting space from and all of the operating costs. So Riverfront is the operating partner, holding the majority of costs, but also the income.
You may have said this already, Chelsea. How many members do you have?
So we were certified by the health department to open with 7 in this space. And we will welcome an 8th that is just honey. So it's weird. Honey, rules around honey are very different than rules around baked goods, for example. And so we have found that we can welcome 2 apiaries in without the same regulations of the others. So soon there will be 9 businesses here at Grace. And then the second location will begin with 3. And both of those are really conservative beginnings because the health department has had bad experiences with commissaries where people weren't actually using their commissary space. And so they have said, you can start with this and we'll hopefully tell you you can have more once you've proven you follow the rules. So, yeah.
Say a little bit about the selection process. You have 60 applicants and space for up to 12. So how do you choose?
Yeah, that part's really hard. It's mostly, so far, it's been first on like who contacted us first. right? So there were businesses that reached out to us before we even broke ground on the kitchen, right? Like word got out that we were trying to do this project. And so the businesses that we opened with had all been with us for more than a year. Again, in that waiting process, in that working in workshops. And so some of it is like who has been around the table and who have we built those relationships with. And some of it is what kind of business can we say yes to? So one of our bakers was one of the ones who just decided that they weren't ready for the monthly and daily use. So the next person that we're saying yes to is another baker who's going to be in the space around the same time commitment. And some of it is the community, a lot of it really is the community engagement, right? Are they responsive to emails and texts? Are they signing up for our workshops? Are they excited about shared space? Are they making a difference in Wilmington? So 3 of our 7 businesses that we started with all have youth mentoring as part of their business model, right? They're employing youth in our city in the summers. Those are kind of businesses that we want to say yes to, right? Ones who really are giving back and who are investing here are ones that like particularly bring us joy. Yeah. And then, right. And then the last piece of, are they financially and business ready? So have they gone through that process with the Small Business Development Center? And SBDC like has, when they say that a business is ready, like there's still some risk involved, right? There's still some, this might not work, but we at least know that they've talked to a coach and that they are serious about expanding this from more than just a catering job here and there to a real business.
I love your attitude and language about saying yes first and then trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, that's been a lot of this process. Yeah, so as Cindy mentioned, I was just commissioned into clergy orders, and we had a day with our bishop a few weeks ago. And she was asking for like, what is our prayer? Like, what are our prayers for each day? And mine really has been that like, there would be enough yes for the day. Both in the like, that we're saying yes to enough things, but also that like my yes for today would be enough, right? That like, this would be good and like enough. And I've just been like really grateful and really proud of our board who has said yes to a similar philosophy, and who is taking risk, but who is also recognizing like we are a startup and we are figuring this out. And our businesses know that, right? Especially those 7 in this first cohort. Like we said, you're signing up for like a lot of us figuring it out. And as you are figuring it out, we are figuring it out, and we like commit to being on this journey together and fighting side by side. But there are going to be days that we get it wrong. There are going to be days when the scheduling doesn't happen how it was supposed to, or when a fridge dies and we didn't catch it the hour it happened. You know, like there are going to be things that go wrong here. And have been really grateful that for the most part, our folks get that and have been gracious in that.
So I was seeing the cohorts meeting and for coaching and for helping with the licensing and all that, but it sounds like y'all meet regularly just for the community aspect of sharing the kitchen and, you know, to be able to address if there aren't things that are not working well, or to try to, how often do y'all meet?
So we actually have not met formally until this month. And we are now starting a once a month cohort meeting. Most of it has been on text threads and phone call, like group phone calls, because so many of our folks are on the move that getting all 7 of them to commit to the same time has been really hard, but they are committed like when they can invest. And sometimes that's at 11 p.m. after they've like put all the kids to bed and wrapped up the day. And so we do now have a once a month cohort in-person check-in. And then we are going to begin offering a workshop every month as well. So it'll be essentially like every 2 weeks an opportunity to all be together. And then we've had enough community events. So we've had 3 community events now where all of them have been present, one of which was our grand opening. One was, there was a Earth Day event here in Wilmington that we set up a tent for and our folks cooked for. And so events like that have brought them together, and really there's been like more check-in and community there more than anywhere else. Sorry, one piece that I forgot, but has become really important to us. Many folks have asked, like, when will this cohort graduate? Like, when will this cohort move out? And the truth is that for some of them, they might never, right? For some of them, this might be the like success of their business, right? Like our food trucks, they don't need a storefront because their main business is on the truck, but they need somewhere to store their food, and they need somewhere to dump their gray water and to wash their dishes at the end of the day. And so like for some, and like for some of our bakers, they don't want to be baking full time. They want to be baking a lot, but like they don't want this to be their full-time employment. And so we are really defining like our success based on their goals, right? So each of them has named to us, in 3 months, I hope to have said yes to whatever, right? Or in 3 years, I hope to have a storefront. Or in a year, I hope to bring on an additional employee. Like each of them have very different goals. And it's been really important to us in this process to say, like, your goals are what matters here, right? I'm not going to define what success is for you, and your goals become our goals to help work together. And so really trying to teach folks that like the commissary model is a successful business model for many food entrepreneurs. Like, and we've already seen that like not everybody is ready for this model, right? Like this model takes a lot of investment and takes a certain level of investment, really, right? And so that's been an important teaching for us, is to name our goals around theirs and to be doing regular check-ins to make sure that they're meeting those markers based on when they define them.
One of the things I want to lift up is how this really turns some of what we see as traditional church metrics on its head. You know, we were trying in the Presbyterian Church to talk about building congregational vitality, eradicating systemic racism, eradicating systemic poverty, dismantling structural racism. But we still like to count the numbers of butts in the pews, the number of dollars in the bank, which are not true measures of vitality, much less true measures of mission. And so what the Kitchen Collective is doing is saying, it's not about cramming in as many food entrepreneurs as possible until they're tripping on one another and the health department is coming around and saying, you're not doing it the way we said you had to do it. Instead, the vision is to to embrace each person in their dream and to walk alongside them so they can be more fully the person that God is calling them to be. And that's never going to be big numbers. That's not going to, that's not going to blow up the budget sheet. It's not going to, probably won't result in suddenly masses of people coming to church on Sunday, except maybe for when the Kitchen Collective sponsors the potluck. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right, like
that's
our opening party was such a gift. I mean, so our opening party, we had more than 200 people in attendance, which like blows away any riverfront event ever. And like when I looked around that space, I mean, it was folks from Riverfront, it was folks from Grace, it was folks from the business community who sit on Wilmington Alliance's board. It was government politician, like political figures who got an invite and who we asked to be there. It was some of our unhoused neighbors who come for food distribution on Tuesdays. It was folks who were driving by who stopped because they saw a big tent set up, like it was so beautiful. And it was this moment of like, all right, even though this, right, like it is hard to see, right? Like when we stop measuring success in the ways that Cindy just named, like it is hard to see. And it's hard to see even as the one who is on the ground every day, right? Like most days I can see it in some form, but like sometimes I'm like, what are we doing? And is this church and is this working? And would anybody care if we shut down? And like, the answer is like, yes, all of those things are happening and people would care. But it's hard and it's messy. And yet like that celebration and so many of these like small moments along the way have just reminded us that like this is good and faithful and life-giving and fun.
I think that's where I was curious about is what I've seen many times is the old model is if there's a partnership with a new worshiping community and a church, is this going to grow our membership? What are we going to benefit from that? And those things that are named are never part of the equation. But I do see churches that are impacted by their relationship, by the partnership, by what they're providing. What you're describing, I can even see just the fact of having people there and cooking and engaging in community. I'm sure it has impacted and influenced that church. And I'm curious if you've seen those ways, or that to me, those are the vitality, those are the viability things that are the gifts of these partnerships. And I wonder if you've seen any other ways that they have that I would say it's Grace, I think.
Yeah.
That they kind of go, wow, this was is including the fact of what their participation in this mission outreach and the ripple effect into.
Yeah, I think it happens most as people like pass in the entryways of the church, right? And as like people pass in the kitchen, as folks like just are interacting with each other more and are having these small conversations. And as like our folks are catering meals that are happening here now, right? Like we have an agreement with Grace that if there is a funeral or if there is a big event, that they reach out to our entrepreneurs first. And they might not be able, like if they can't do the event or it's not within their price range or whatever, that like they can go with someone else, but they reach out to our folks first. And we're like seeing that in the presbytery as well, right? I had lunch with someone today who is a member of a church a half an hour outside the city, but they're going to start hiring one of our folks to do breakfast once a month. And like, yeah, like they are looking for tangible ways to be investing in small business. And they're really excited that they're going to get to see Mark once a month for like the next year, and to build a relationship with him, and to, again, I think often like when we get, it's such around the ministry of food, right? And I think we often do a really poor job of thinking about like where our food has come from and who has made it. And it's a piece of trying to do that better, right? And at least being in relationship with the one who is catering, and with the story and the dream of the business. It's really special.
I had one other, and it's more practical question is, I guess I'm surprised, and this is just my own ignorance about food trucks. I didn't realize they needed to have an off-site location that had that. You said that's true for Delaware. Is that true for, you found pretty much nationwide? That's a pretty standard. Okay, that's
Yeah,
good to
it's a
know.
pretty standard thing. Many trucks will have an agreement with a restaurant that they can, right? So it's often called ghost kitchens, that they can wash dishes and dump water at a restaurant. But the restaurant has to has to agree to the times, and it's pretty tricky. And most restaurants don't want another business like profiting from their space. And so those agreements can be hard to find.
So we wanted to make sure this was an hour because I think that's important. I did put the link in the chat, but for those who are watching later, you can go to www.wilmingtonkitchencollective.com, all one word, and see the website. There's a contact us button and a way to learn more about what's going on. And Chelsea was kind enough to put her email address and phone number in the chat. Since we're posting this video, I'm not going to read that out loud. So if people want to get in touch with Chelsea, they can do it through the website, or if you know me, I can help connect you. But this is one of those things that just feels so full of hope and possibility and sweat and tears. and setbacks and difficulties, and the moments when you scream and pound the wall, and the moments when you jump up and down and feel like your heart's going to just bust because there's so much joy and love. And yeah, that's church for me. That's church for me. And I feel so thrilled that somehow God saw fit to bring together all these pieces for food entrepreneurs in a city with an exceptionally high rate of poverty, a high rate of violence, a city with a high rate of disadvantage, educational, medical, housing, just the whole list. And in this one area, there's this possibility to help people chase their dreams and do it in a way that is so consistent with our faith, food. Yay, so thank you, Chelsea, for A, saying yes to the call, and B, saying yes to, I'll do a Zoom if people want to know more. Sure, I can do that.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you, Chelsea.
and I really do offer it wider, right? Like we are still learning, but if there are particular churches or particular leaders who you're like, I want another call, happy to have that. Again, we're beginning to figure out what that looks like on a wider scale, but at least right now, just like happy to have the conversation. I mean, I could talk about kitchens and church and people all day. So this are like the conversations that are life-giving and like remind me why we said yes in the first place. So I just thank y'all for hopping on.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you.